You know, people always say that the reason they like to get out in nature, experience the outdoors, is because they want to get away from their real everyday life. You know, get away from technology, get away from social media. I can sympathize with that, but honestly, that's not my motivator. I love getting out here and just enjoying nature because, I don't know, it's cool. I like it better than being in my office or at home all the time. There's just so many interesting things to experience, and the more time I can do that, the happier I am. And that's why I've been using Starlink for over 2 years now. Starlink has become an integral part of our adventures. This lets me go more places for longer periods of time because it doesn't mean I have to take away from work. I can still get everything I need to get done and have that connection to my at-home life, but I can do it in places like this. And Starlink is pretty cool. But Starlink is a rather expensive investment to get into, so like knowing what you're getting into I think is important. So here's kind of my experience and why I think Starlink is totally worth it. But it doesn't come without its issues. Now with Starlink, I think there are kind of 3 things to consider here that, or at least that I think about when thinking about my experience with Starlink. And that is 1, the hardware, 2, powering it, and 3, the overall connectivity and how well it actually works. Now for hardware, this is where things are going to be a little different because I'm still using the Gen 2 hardware. And well, there's no easy way to say it. This hardware kind of sucks. I've had a ton of issues with it, and going on forums and reading online with other people's situations, I'm not alone in that. This hardware sucks, and that's why they don't make it anymore, and they've upgraded to the new style, which doesn't move, it doesn't articulate on its own. Instead, you kind of just lay it out, and that's all it is. This one moves and does everything, but at the same time, it still does work, so that's still what I'm using. And for what I use it for, I wanted something that was very easy to set up on my rig. I didn't want to have to run a cable super far and, put it out in the middle of a field or something. I just wanted something that was, at base camp, very local. And that's where I came up with this idea, which was just using a galvanized piece of pipe, and I mounted it to my roof rack, and now I can just slot this in the top. I don't have to use the stand that it comes with. I can run the cable inside my car to the router, and we're good to go. But I will say that I will be upgrading to the new Starlink Mini hardware simply because the size and I guess effectiveness, like the ease of use of it, seems so much better. I'm going to be testing that out, and it's probably going to be replacing my Gen 2 hardware. So when that comes in and I have some time using it, I'll make a video on that too. But I will have to say, when it comes to hardware, if you're like looking at maybe a used option or a refurbished option or something like that of the Gen 2 hardware, honestly, I'd say stay away. Spend a little bit more money on the Gen 3 or the Mini because this hardware just has issues. I've had to replace cables. I've had to do a bunch of troubleshooting on the software side. It's been a pain, but that's kind of the bad out of the way. Overall, the rest of it has been very great. With this whole system, a big thing you have to remember and just consider when you're going out is that this requires power. You're gonna have to plug it in somewhere. And well, that's where this video sponsor BLUETTI and the AC70 come in. This is a 768 watt-hour battery with 1,000 watts of output, and this has a ton of juice and a ton of features to power really anything you need. For me, when I'm out here, it is powering things like Starlink, and I also use it to power my refrigerator when I am out on the go. So having a battery like this has been vital for me. Now, like I said, this is a 768 watt-hour battery with 1,000 watts of power, but if you need a little extra boost, some appliances might require that when they start up. This can go up to 2,000, and it also charges super fast. From 0 to 80%, it only takes about 45 minutes when plugged in over AC, but that's not the only way to charge. You can also charge with solar, and it accepts up to 500 watts of solar input. So if you have those different solar panels, you can charge this thing right up. And if you are doing that 500 watts, it can charge this in just 2 hours, which is kind of crazy. Now, powering all of this inside are lithium iron phosphate batteries, which is great because these are really long lasting. These batteries, after 3,000 cycles, you still have 80% capacity, which is great. So the battery's not gonna just stop working, it'll just slowly get lower, but this is gonna last you a long time. And it's safe too. These are big batteries that you have here, but it has a battery management system inside, which can monitor the battery, everything it's doing, so that if something does go wrong, it can kind of shut down the system and make sure you are safe and don't have any battery issues. And this is also something you can build upon. There are expansion batteries like the B80, B230, and B300 that actually expand your capacity. So you can kind of use this as the brain and add more batteries to it. So when paired with that B80, you now have 1574 watt hours of battery, which is essentially double, so you can add on to your investment. And there is a smart app here, which I actually like a lot for batteries like this, for my use case, like with Starlink, because, you know, let's say I get in the tent at night, I still want Starlink powered up because that's when I can get some work done on my laptop, or, you know, we can watch a movie, stream something. That's great, but then when I want to go to bed, I can just go in the app and turn the battery off. So if you are interested in a battery like this, which I highly suggest getting one if you're going to be doing adventures, the AC70 is linked down below. You can learn more about it and pick one up for yourself. Now for Starlink, when powering over AC with a portable battery like this, I can get a few days of moderate use out of it. I don't leave it all in all the time. I just power it on whenever I need it and power it off when I don't, so that I can conserve power. And I've gone for 3-day trips using it every day at every camp that we stop at, and it's been fine. That has not been an issue. I've also run it alongside my refrigerator on the same battery, and it's been fine. So, you know, it doesn't use that much power, but again, this is Gen 2 hardware, so that doesn't really matter all that much anymore. So if you do have a good big battery bank, you're not gonna have any issues. And you can also power it in different ways. I've seen 12-volt mods. I've seen, you know, powering it off your car's inverter. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. This is just the most simple and easy way that I do it. Okay, so let's get to the actual important thing, which is the connection. How well does this thing even work? And for me, I mean, obviously it depends what you're doing. For me, this is not a critical system. If it ends up like not working very well, it's not a big deal. I don't need it while I'm on my trips. But there are certain situations where people would buy the system and would actually need it to work really well. That's just not my situation. For me, what I want is to be able to stream, is to be able to do web browsing and, you know, document editing and work while I'm on the go. And this does really well for that. I can get a consistent 120 down, 30 up. It's variable in that range, but it's about there all the time. And that has always been. Since day one, that's been the speed, and now it's still that same speed. And for what I'm doing, that's excellent. And the connection is very reliable, in my experience at least. I have heard that people who have the home system would have some dropouts every once in a while with the satellites, and that continuously gets better as they add more to the network in the sky. But I never really noticed that. And I think it just comes down to how I'm using the system. I'm not like on it all the time. I set it up when I get to camp, turn it off when I go to sleep, and do that the next day until I get home. So I'm not like I said, it's not mission critical for me that this works. I haven't noticed any of those dropouts. So I don't really think that's an issue, but the connection has been really stable and useful. And it has come in handy for certain situations. Like for instance, we were in the Moab area in Canyonlands, and there was a river crossing that we weren't sure we were going to be able to do. And if we went that direction towards the river crossing and we couldn't do the river crossing because the water was too high, it would mean we'd have to retract about 100 miles. And that meant we needed a lot of gas. So we wanted to plan for that, but we were also in the middle of the desert with no internet connection. Starlink, you know, comes in handy for situations like that, where we can now kind of check conditions in you know, just using the internet. So it does come in handy to have this connection anywhere, and it is something that we genuinely use. So I think if you're just looking for basic internet connection that is fast enough for streaming, fast enough for really anything, this is going to do it really well. And I just haven't had very many issues, if any at all. What has been kind of an issue is the price. The price is a lot, and they recently raised those prices. I'll put the current ones right here on screen so you can see them. Now this is billed monthly, and what's nice is with the Roam, you know, package, I can turn it off when I'm not using it. So if I know I'm not going on an adventure or I'm gonna not need Starlink for that month, I just stop and pause the subscription so I don't have to pay for it. So that is nice that I can do that, but that price is painful. Luckily now with the Starlink Mini, there's a more affordable option, which feels a lot better, but it is expensive. If you're going to be using it all the time, it is definitely worth it. But if it's just like a every once in a while, you know, convenience, paying over $100 a month for this service, it can be kind of painful. But for the amount that I've used it and for the things I use it for, it's well worth it, especially if I just turn it on when I know I have a month that I'm going to use it. Starlink feels like a kind of sleeper technology that is just kind of changing everything when it comes to internet connectivity. I mean, like this, I'm in the middle of nowhere and I can have full high-speed internet access. And the other day I went to Hawaii on Hawaiian Airlines, and they have a deal with Starlink. I had over 100 gigabits per second while I was over the Pacific Ocean. I was streaming, I was doing everything that I would do at home on an airplane. That's incredible. It's something I've been waiting for so long, and it makes flying so much better. And there's other applications when it comes to, I don't know, safety or communications, where having this satellite network in the air means, or I guess in space, not even the air, means, I mean, there's just so many more things you can do. And it essentially takes connection issues off the table. No longer do I have to worry about whether I have signal. I will have signal. I just have to have the hardware for it, and I'm good to go. That is, it's a big deal. And I think the plus side is better than some of the downsides of having all these satellites in the sky. I know there are negatives that come from that, but I think the positives outweigh it. And that's not even from a user's perspective. I think that's just from a global having internet connectivity everywhere perspective. But from a user's perspective, like me, I can have internet anywhere. I can go work anywhere. I can spend my time outside with these stupid flies that are very annoying that you've probably been hearing buzzing this whole time, but I can do it. And the fact that that's even possible is pretty amazing. Starlink gets a big plus from me, and I'm excited to try the new version of the Starlink Mini so that I can, just kind of take this whole setup to the next level.